The grand palace of the Ziran Empire stretched high into the alien skies. Its walls shimmered with silver and blue, carved with symbols of ancient power. At the center of the throne room sat a small figure, no taller than a child, yet feared by millions across the stars. She was the Empress of Ziran, the so-called divine ruler of her people, wrapped in glowing robes and crowned with a jewel that pulsed with inner fire. Her size was deceiving. Though she looked fragile, her voice carried, like a blade. Her words cut deep, sharp with pride and arrogance. Every alien noble knelt before her throne, heads lowered while she gazed down with cold golden eyes. On that day, a group of humans stood at the edge of the hall, brought in as servants. Their heads were bowed too, yet their presence made the air heavy with tension. The Empress leaned forward and her thin lips curled into a mocking smile. "Look at them," she said, her voice echoing. "Humans, soft-skinned and simple-minded. You call yourselves explorers, but you are nothing more than pets in my empire." Laughter filled the throne room. Her advisors and guards followed her lead, sneering at the humans. Some of the servants lowered their heads further, ashamed, while others clenched their fists but dared not speak. Among them stood one human guard. He was taller than most, his eyes steady, his posture unshaken. Unlike the others, he did not bow too low, but kept his gaze forward. The Empress noticed and narrowed her eyes. "You," she said sharply, pointing a jeweled finger at him. "Do you think yourself different? Do you believe humans have strength? Say something, human." The hall grew silent. All eyes turned to the guard, waiting for him to stumble or falter. But he remained still, his voice calm and steady. "I believe actions speak louder than words, Empress." Gasps rippled through the court. Speaking so directly was dangerous, even foolish. Yet the guard did not shake. His calmness unsettled her, but instead of punishing him, she laughed. A short, cold laugh that echoed against the silver walls. "How amusing," she said. "A human who believes his kind can act with courage. You may live today, guard, but never forget. You serve me because you are weak. My empire stands because humanity bends." She leaned back on her throne, dismissing him with a flick of her hand. The courtiers laughed again, eager to echo their Empress. But a strange weight lingered in the air. Something about the guard's words left an invisible mark, like a spark hidden in dry grass. The Empress ignored it, lifting her chin higher. She wanted to appear untouchable, untouchably proud. Yet behind her golden eyes, a sliver of irritation remained. Why did a human not tremble before her? The court moved on. Petitions were read, disputes were settled. But her thoughts wandered back to the human's calm gaze. She despised it. Humanity, to her, was a stain across the galaxy. Too emotional, too fragile, too reckless. Her empire had ruled for centuries, and she intended to remind every race of their place, especially humans. As the day stretched on, shadows crept into the palace halls. Courtiers whispered behind closed doors. Traders spoke of unrest in the outer colonies. The Empress waved it all away, sure of her power. Yet the guard, silent at the edge of the chamber, noticed every whisper, every uneasy glance. Something was shifting, and not even the Empress could laugh it away. Night fell over the Ziran capital. The Empress walked the upper balcony, staring out across the glittering city. Towers stretched like spears into the sky, lights glowing like fireflies in the dark. She told herself it was hers, all of it, eternal under her reign. "Humans will never rule here," she muttered under her breath, her pride sharp as steel. But deep inside the palace, beyond her sight, her advisors gathered in secret. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices sharp with ambition and fear. Enemies were rising, rival clans preparing to strike. They wondered if the tiny Empress, with all her scorn and pride, could truly protect them. The human guard passed near the chamber. As he patrolled, he caught fragments of their voices, whispers of betrayal, and his jaw tightened. He said nothing, but his eyes grew harder. Back in her chambers, the Empress dismissed her servants and sat alone. She thought of the human again, his calm voice, refusing to tremble. She hated him for it, but she could not forget. Her pride told her humans were nothing, yet a quiet part of her wondered why that single man stood so steady when her own nobles bowed so quickly. She shook the thought away, telling herself she was untouchable. But the night grew heavy, and the dim silence of the palace carried a warning. The Empress of Scorn ruled with pride, but pride could not shield her from the storm that was coming. The morning began with banners flying high above the Zyran palace, their silver cloth dancing in the warm alien wind. From a distance, the empire looked unshakable, proud towers piercing the sky, soldiers marching with shining armor. But within the palace walls, unease was spreading like smoke before a fire. The Empress sat upon her throne, her tiny figure cloaked in robes of deep crimson. Her eyes glittered with arrogance as she listened to reports from her advisors. They spoke of distant colonies failing to send tribute, of ships disappearing along the trade routes, of whispers that rival clans were moving armies closer to the capital. She waved their warnings away with a flick of her hand. "They would not dare," she said, her voice sharp. "My empire has stood for centuries. No one challenges the Empress of Zyran and lives." But even as she spoke, thunder rolled across the skies, not from storms, but from warships breaking through orbit. The floor beneath the palace trembled. Courtiers gasped and scrambled. The golden pillars shook, dust falling like rain. The Empress rose from her throne in disbelief. "What is this noise?" she demanded. One advisor dropped to his knees. "Empress, the enemy has come. The Dravok fleet has pierced our defenses. They are descending upon the city." The throne room erupted into chaos. Nobles screamed, guards abandoned their posts, and servants scattered. The Empress stood frozen, her pride colliding with the sudden truth. Her empire was under attack. Windows burst inward as explosions lit the city outside. Towers crumbled in the distance, fire swallowing the horizon. The once untouchable capital was burning. Her guards rushed forward, forming a shaky line around her, but their eyes betrayed their fear. Loyalty wavered as the ground shook harder, as the sound of drums and war horns echoed from the streets below. The Empress clenched her fists. "Cowards, all of you," she shouted. "You swore oaths to me. You will fight to the last breath." Yet, one by one, soldiers slipped away, their armor clattering as they fled through hidden doors. Advisors whispered excuses, bowing low before vanishing into the shadows. The throne room, once filled with loyal subjects, was now emptying like water through cracked stone. Only a few remained, among them the same human guard who had stood silently the day before. His posture was firm, his gaze locked on the burning city beyond the windows. The Empress's heart pounded in her chest. Though she would not admit fear, she turned to him, her voice sharp. "You, human, do not think this chaos excuses you. You will stay at your post. You will guard your Empress until the last breath." He looked at her, calm as ever. "I will do what must be done." Before she could reply, the massive palace doors thundered as they were struck from outside. Each blow echoed like the heartbeat of doom. The sound grew louder, closer, until the doors split and crashed to the marble floor. Enemy warriors surged inside, towering Dravok soldiers with jagged armor and blazing weapons. Their eyes glowed red with the hunger of conquest. They shouted in a language of war, their voices shaking the throne room walls. The Empress's advisors screamed and ran. Some fell to the blades before they could escape. The guards who had promised loyalty dropped their spears and fled through side passages. For the first time, the Empress felt small, not in size, but in power. Alone upon her throne, mocked by fate, she realized her crown could not save her. The Dravok leader stepped forward, a giant with scars across his face. He pointed his blade at her, his voice like rolling thunder. "The age of Zyran ends today. The Empress dies, and the empire falls." The Empress's lips trembled, but her pride forced words past them. "You will regret this. I am your rightful ruler." The Dravok laughed, the sound cruel and final. His soldiers advanced, their weapons raised, and then the human guard stepped forward. Alone against dozens of armored warriors, he raised his weapon. His stance was unshaken, his eyes filled not with fear, but with resolve. The Empress gasped, stunned. "You dare?" she whispered. "I said yesterday." The human replied, his voice steady. "Actions speak louder than words." Steel clashed as the first Dravok lunged. The guard struck with precision, parrying the attack and driving the enemy back. He fought not like a servant, but like a man who carried centuries of courage in his blood. The Empress watched, frozen between terror and awe. Her people had abandoned her. Her empire crumbled outside these walls. Yet a single human, mocked and despised, stood unyielding against the storm. As fire spread across the throne room and the battle roared, a thought pierced her pride like a blade. Perhaps she had been wrong. Perhaps humanity was not weak at all. The palace shook again, dust falling in thick clouds. The fall of the throne had begun, and the tiny Empress would soon learn that survival was no longer about power or pride. It was about who refused to walk away. The throne room smelled of smoke and blood. Flames licked the edges of the shattered pillars, and the cries of the wounded echoed through the halls. The tiny Empress stood trembling, though she tried to hide it beneath her sharp voice. Around her, the mighty empire she had ruled with scorn was falling apart piece by piece. The Dravok soldiers pressed forward, their heavy boots cracking marble tiles. The human guard fought fiercely, blade flashing, striking with precision. Every swing pushed back another enemy, but there were too many. Sparks danced as steel clashed against alien weapons. The Empress stumbled backward, her crown slipping slightly as fear took root. "Where are my generals?" she cried. "Where are my loyal servants?" No answer came. Her nobles were gone. Her soldiers had fled. The throne room, once a symbol of order, was now a battlefield of betrayal. Suddenly, a side door creaked open. A group of her closest advisors rushed in, their faces pale but their eyes sharp. Relief flickered across her features, but it vanished the moment she saw the way they looked at her. Not with loyalty, not with fear, but with calculation. One advisor stepped forward, his long robes torn, his voice bitter. "Empress, your time is over. The Dravok will not spare you. Surrender, and perhaps we can save ourselves." The Empress's golden eyes widened. "You dare speak treason in my own hall?" Another advisor sneered. "Treason? No, survival. You mocked humanity, you mocked us all, but now your arrogance has doomed the empire. We will hand you over. It is the only way to buy peace." The words struck her harder than any blade. For years she had ruled with pride, demanding obedience, believing her throne unshakable. Now the very voices that once praised her were offering her life as a bargain. The human guard heard every word. His blade dripped with the blood of fallen Dravok, his chest rising with heavy breaths. He looked at the advisors, his eyes cold. "You would sell her to save yourselves?" "Yes," the first advisor said firmly. "She is small and fragile. What power does she hold now? Her pride will not stop an army." The Empress's knees weakened, and for the first time she felt truly alone. Her crown, once a symbol of control, now felt like a weight pulling her down. The Dravok leader stepped closer, a cruel smile forming. "Hand her over, and perhaps you will live. Resist, and you all die." The advisors looked at one another, then at the Empress. Slowly they stepped aside, leaving her exposed. Their betrayal was complete. Her breath caught in her throat. These were the same men who had bowed before her, the same voices that had sung her praises. Now they had abandoned her, offering her up like a lamb to the slaughter. Tears threatened to form, but her pride burned them away. She would not let them see her break. Even in betrayal, she would not bow. The Dravok advanced, their weapons raised. The human guard moved quickly, planting himself between the Empress and the enemy. His stance was firm, his voice steady. "If you want her, you go through me." The Empress stared at him in disbelief. "You fool," she whispered. "They will kill you. You cannot fight them all." He did not turn. "Maybe not, but I will not stand aside while cowards betray their own ruler. Actions matter, even if they cost me everything." The Dravok lunged, but the human met them with fierce determination. His blade flashed, his movements sharp, his will unbreakable. Every strike slowed their advance. Every block bought the Empress another breath. The advisors shrank back, realizing the human fought harder for their Empress than they ever had. Their shame twisted into silence, but none dared to step forward. Sirt. Empress's pride cracked, though she tried to hide it. For the first time she questioned her own beliefs. She had called humans weak, mocked their spirit. But here was a human standing against an army when her own people betrayed her. The flames grew hotter, smoke filling the hall. The battle raged as shadows flickered across the broken walls. One Dravok soldier struck the human guard across the arm, blood spilling down his sleeve. He staggered but did not fall. He lifted his blade again, eyes blazing with stubborn fire. The Empress's heart pounded. She wanted to command him to stop, to tell him to run, but the words caught in her throat. Something inside her was changing. For the first time in her reign, she felt small, not because of her size, but because of her heart. The Dravok leader roared, calling for more soldiers. The hall filled with shadows and blades, betrayal heavy in the air. The Empress stood frozen, caught between fear and awe, as the human refused to give way. Her empire had betrayed her. Her throne had fallen. But one truth shone bright through the smoke. Humanity, the race she had mocked, carried a strength she could no longer deny. The palace roared with fire. Flames crawled along the marble pillars and smoke curled into the vaulted ceiling, turning the once glorious hall into a furnace of chaos. The cries of betrayal still echoed in the Empress's ears, mixing with the clash of steel as the human guard fought on. His sword flashed again and again, sparks flying, his body moving with the rhythm of survival. The Empress pressed her back against the throne, her golden eyes wide. She had mocked humanity. She had spat on their worth, but this one man stood like a wall while her own generals abandoned her. The Dravok warriors pushed harder. Their heavy armor gleamed red in the firelight, their voices a chorus of war. The human's arm bled freely. His breaths came heavy, but he did not retreat. Each step forward they tried to take, he pushed them back with furious strikes. Enough! The Dravok leader snarled, his blade rising high. Kill the human. Take the Empress. The Empress's heart hammered as the giant warrior advanced. She wanted to scream at the human to run, to leave her to her fate, but no sound left her lips. The leader struck with force, his blade crashing down. The human raised his sword just in time, sparks bursting as metal clashed. The impact drove him to one knee, yet he refused to fall. He gritted his teeth, eyes locked with the enemy, and with a sudden burst of strength he shoved the leader back. The palace trembled as another explosion ripped through the city outside. The floor cracked, dust rained from above, and the Empress realized the throne room would soon collapse. The human glanced over his shoulder, his voice sharp and steady. We have to move. She stiffened, her pride resisting. I will not run like a common fugitive. Another wall shook and a blazing beam crashed onto the floor, scattering sparks. The human stepped closer, eyes fierce. Then you will die. Here, Empress. Choose now. For a moment she stood frozen, torn between her pride and the instinct to live. The heat of the flames burned her skin. The roar of the Dravok filled her ears, and finally her small body trembled as she gave a single nod. Without hesitation, the human dropped his sword for a moment, scooped her up, and lifted her onto his shoulder. She struggled, her fist pounding against him. Put me down, human, I command you. He ignored her protests, tightening his grip. Save your breath. You'll need it to survive. The Empress clenched her teeth, fury boiling, yet beneath it she felt something unfamiliar. Safety. For the first time, she was being carried not as a ruler, not as a prize, but as someone worth protecting. The human snatched his blade again and pushed through the smoke. He swung wide, clearing a path, and charged toward the side passage. Fire burned along the walls. Shadows leapt like demons, and every step echoed with danger. Dravok soldiers shouted, chasing them down the corridors. Arrows whistled past, striking stone, while the human zigzagged through the hallways, his speed unbroken despite the weight on his shoulder. The Empress clung tighter without meaning to. her small hands gripping his armor as fear overwhelmed her pride. They burst into a hallway lined with shattered statues of past rulers. Firelight flickered against broken faces, their stone crowns cracked. To the Empress it felt like a cruel omen, her empire collapsing like the statues before her eyes. The human ran, boots pounding against marble. Behind them, the enemy closed, in their war cries echoing. He stopped only when a barricade of burning rubble blocked the way. The Empress gasped. "We are trapped." The human scanned the hall quickly. The fire roared, but through the smoke he saw a broken window. Without hesitation he rushed forward, kicked aside the last of the rubble, and smashed the frame with his sword. Shards of glass scattered into the night. "Hold tight," he said. Before she could protest, he leapt through the window. They fell into the darkness, the rush of air screaming around them. The Empress's heart leapt into her throat as the ground rushed. Closer. At the last moment, the human twisted, landing hard but rolling across the stone courtyard. Pain shot through his body, yet he held her firmly, shielding her from the impact. He rose with a groan, blood on his lips. But he did not stop. The palace behind them collapsed in a shower of fire and smoke. The Dravok roared in victory, but the human kept moving, carrying the Empress into the shadows of the outer streets. The city was chaos. Towers burned, ships exploded in the sky, and panicked civilians fled in every direction. The Empress's chest tightened as she watched her empire crumble. Her crown had no power here, her commands no longer mattered. The human pressed forward, weaving through alleys, avoiding enemy patrols. Every muscle in his body burned, but he refused to set her down. She whispered, her voice shaky. "Why? Why do you do this? I mocked you. I called your kind weak." He didn't look at her, his voice calm even in the chaos. "Because leaving you behind isn't the human way." Her lips parted, but no words came. She had lived her life believing humans were beneath her, yet here she was, alive only because of one. The night blazed with fire. The city screamed in ruin, and still the human carried her forward. The escape through fire had begun, and the Empress of Scorn could no longer deny the truth burning around her. The once glorious capital now smoldered behind them, its towers reduced to broken bones of fire and smoke. The human carried the tiny Empress through the ruined gates and into the open night. Beyond the city lay the wastelands, endless stretches of cracked desert, black rock, and dust storms that could swallow an army whole. The Empress lifted her, head weakly from his shoulder, golden eyes widening at the barren horizon. Her empire had always been protected by walls, soldiers, and fleets. Yet now nothing stood between her and the wild. For the first time she felt small, not because of her size, but because of the vast emptiness around her. "You cannot keep this up," she said, her voice sharp though it trembled. "You are wounded. You will collapse before dawn." The human kept walking, his breath heavy but steady. "Then I will walk until I collapse, but not before you are safe." Her pride flared. "Safe? You think dragging me through this wasteland is safety?" "You are a fool." He did not reply. His silence angered her more than his words, for it reminded her that no matter how much she mocked him, he would not bend. The night wind howled, carrying with it the scent of ash from the burning city. In the distance, the Empress could see shapes moving, shadows of enemy scouts searching the ruins. The human adjusted his grip, quickening his pace as he slipped into the cover of jagged rocks. Hours passed. The moons of the Zyran sky drifted above, casting pale light across the cracked ground. The human finally set her down beside a ridge, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Sweat and blood mixed on his skin, yet his eyes stayed alert. The Empress stood unsteadily, brushing the dust from her robes. "This is beneath me. I am an Empress, not a child to be carried across stones." The human leaned against the rocks, gripping his sword. "Then walk, Empress. But if you fall behind, the Dravok will find you before dawn." Her pride faltered as the truth sank in. She looked across the wasteland, its endless horizon stretching like a cruel test. For the first time she took a step beside him, her small, frame dwarfed by the shadows around her. The wasteland was not silent. Strange creatures stirred in the darkness, their eyes glinting with hunger. The human tightened his grip on his sword, scanning the ridges. The Empress tried to walk with her chin high, but every cry of the night made her flinch. A sudden screech split the air. From the rocks ahead, a beast leapt forward, tall, with 4 legs ending in claws, its mouth lined with rows of teeth. The Empress froze in terror. The human stepped in front of her, blade raised. The beast lunged, and in a swift motion he slashed across its throat. Black blood sprayed across the stones as the creature collapsed. The Empress stumbled back, her hands trembling. "You killed it." Without hesitation. He wiped his blade, eyes still scanning. "Because hesitation kills, and because keeping you alive is all that matters now." Her throat tightened, though she masked it with anger. "You protect me, as if I am helpless." He looked at her briefly. "Right now you are." The words cut deeper than her pride wanted to admit. For the first time she lowered her eyes, no reply forming on her lips. They pressed onward, climbing ridges and crossing dunes of ash. The Empress's legs weakened, and soon she stumbled, her tiny form collapsing to the ground. The human knelt beside her, lifting her once more without a word. She rested against his shoulder, exhausted, yet her mind churned. Her generals had abandoned her, her advisors had betrayed her, but this human, a man she had mocked, carried her through fire, through beasts, through wasteland. As the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, the wasteland revealed its harsh truth. The land stretched endless and dry, broken by jagged cliffs and hollow canyons. Wind tore across the rocks, carrying clouds of dust that stung the eyes. The human found a cave tucked into a cliffside and carried her inside. The shadows provided shelter, but the air was cold. He set her down gently, then collapsed against the wall, his wounds bleeding through his armor. The Empress watched him, her lips pressed tight. Pride urged her to stay silent, to let the weight of her crown shield her heart. Yet another part of her, quieter, hidden, whispered words she had never spoken to a human before. "Why do you not leave me?" she asked softly. "Why risk your life for me when I gave you only scorn?" The human closed his eyes briefly, then looked at her. His voice was steady, calm. "Because leaving someone behind is not what humans do. Even those who mock us, even those who hate us, we carry them." Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to remind him she was an empress, not a weakling. But the words would not come. Instead, she sat in silence, the echo of his answer filling the cave. Outside, the wasteland stretched on, merciless and endless. The empire was gone, the palace destroyed, and enemies hunted them still. Yet in the heart of the wasteland, the Empress realized something far more dangerous than the Dravok was happening. Her heart was beginning to change. The cave walls echoed with the sound of the human's labored breathing. His arm was wrapped in cloth torn from his tunic, blood soaking through. The Empress sat across from him, her golden eyes fixed on the fire he had built from scraps of dry wood. Shadows flickered over her small face, shadows that made her look less like a ruler and more like a lost child. She wanted to speak, but pride locked her tongue. For hours, silence ruled the cave, broken only by the distant howl of wasteland creatures. Finally, the human shifted, pushing himself to his feet, though his body screamed with pain. "We cannot stay," he said, his voice low. "Scouts will find us if we rest too long." The Empress frowned. "You can barely stand. Your wounds—" He cut her off with a steady look. "I will stand as long as I must. My choice is made." She rose too, clutching her robe tightly. "Your choice? What foolishness drives you? You risk your life for me when my own people have abandoned me." "Why?" He bent to lift his sword, the blade stained with ash and blood. "Because no one deserves to be left behind. Not even you." Her chest tightened at the words. They carried weight heavier than any crown. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar. Shame. The human moved toward the cave entrance, his steps heavy but sure. The Empress followed reluctantly, her small feet scuffing against the stone. When they stepped into the pale light of dawn, the wasteland stretched before them again, endless and cruel. The sun rose higher, baking the cracked earth. Hours passed as they moved across the desert floor. The human stumbled once, twice, but each time he forced himself upright, carrying her when her legs failed. His breaths grew ragged, yet he refused to stop. By midday, a shadow fell across the sand. The Empress looked up sharply. Enemy scouts, their armor glinting as they rode beasts of war across the ridge. Her stomach twisted with fear. "They have found us," she whispered. The human tightened his grip on his sword. "Then we make our stand." "No," she said quickly, surprising herself. "You cannot fight them all. We should hide." "There is no place to hide," he replied, calmly. "They will track us, surround us. If I fight, you have a chance." The Empress's breath caught. "A chance? You speak as if you are ready to die." He looked at her then, eyes steady, unwavering. "If that is the price, then yes. My choice is simple. I carry you to safety no matter what it costs me." Her hands shook as she stared at him. She remembered the palace, the mocking laughter she had thrown at his kind. Weak, she had called humans, unworthy. Yet here he was, wounded and weary, standing firm where her entire empire had collapsed. The scouts charged, their war cries echoing. Dust rose in waves as they drew closer. The human stepped forward, placing himself between them and the Empress. Her voice cracked. "Do not do this. I forbid it." He gave a small, grim smile. "You are not forbidding me. You are asking me." And the answer is still the same. The first scout lunged, a spear aimed at the Empress. The human intercepted, his blade slicing through the shaft, then striking the rider down. Another followed, swinging wide, but the human ducked low, driving his sword into the beast's chest. Blood splattered the sand. The Empress gasped, her tiny hands clutching her crown. "You cannot fight them all. You will die." The human fought on, his movements slower now, his body weakened. He bled from fresh cuts, his breath ragged. Yet each time he fell to one knee, he rose again, forcing the enemy back. One scout broke through, racing toward the Empress. She froze, terror gripping her. But before the blade could reach her, the human threw himself in the way, taking the strike across his side. Blood poured, his face pale with pain, but he swung his sword one last time, dropping the attacker. The Empress rushed to him, kneeling beside his collapsing body. Her golden eyes burned with tears she had never allowed herself before. "Why? Why would you do this?" His voice was faint, but steady. "Because humans choose. And I chose to carry you. Even if I fall, you live." She shook her head, clutching his hand. "I mocked you. I despised you. And still, you give everything." The surviving scouts hesitated, unnerved by the human's fury even in near death. Some pulled back. Others circled warily. The Empress rose, her tiny frame trembling yet defiant. For the first time she stood not as a ruler demanding respect, but as someone shielding another. She glared at the scouts, her voice breaking yet fierce. "You will not take him. You will not take me." Something inside her cracked wide open. Pride no longer mattered. Her empire was gone, her crown meaningless. What mattered was the human lying in the sand, the man who had chosen her life over his own. The wasteland wind howled, carrying the silence that followed. The battle was not yet over, but in that moment the Empress understood. The human's choice was not weakness. It was the strongest thing she had ever seen. The wasteland wind screamed across the dunes, carrying the smell of blood and dust. The human knelt in the sand, his body weak, wounds bleeding, yet his sword still clutched in his hand. Around him lay the fallen scouts, their beasts sprawled lifeless, their weapons scattered. A few survivors lingered at a distance, their eyes wary, unwilling to approach the man who refused to fall. The tiny Empress stood beside him, her crown tilted, her robes torn by the desert storms. For the first time in her life, she felt no weight of throne or empire. She felt only the fragile breath of the human who had carried her this far. "Stay down," she whispered urgently, kneeling beside him. "You have done enough. Please rest." His eyes opened slowly, gaze steady even through pain. "Not enough. They will come again. I must hold them back." Her small hands trembled as she pressed them against his wound. "You will die. And I cannot let that happen." He gave a faint smile. "That is the human way. We give, even when there is nothing left to give." The Empress's throat tightened. For years she had laughed at humanity, mocked their weakness. Yet this dying man had shown her more strength than her entire empire. She looked at the distant scouts, saw their hesitation, and for the first time she understood. Fear did not win battles, courage did. She rose slowly, standing before him. Her voice rang out across the dunes, sharp and fierce. "He will not die here. If you want me, then come, but know this. I will fight beside him." The words surprised even her. The scouts shifted uneasily, uncertain of the tiny Empress who once mocked all others. They had expected her to cower, to beg for mercy. Instead, they saw fire in her eyes, fire borrowed from the human who had refused to leave her. The standoff stretched into silence. Finally, the Dravok survivors pulled back, retreating into the wasteland. Their shadows disappeared over the ridge, leaving only the sound of the wind. The Empress dropped to her knees beside the human once more. Tears slipped from her golden eyes, falling onto the sand. "They are gone. You saved me again. But you are broken. You cannot walk." He closed his eyes, breathing shallow. "Then leave me. Go. You will survive." Her voice cracked as she shook her head. "No. You carried me through fire, through beasts, through betrayal. Now I will carry you." Her body was small, fragile, but her will hardened like steel. She pulled his arm over her shoulder, struggling under his weight. Step by step, she dragged him across the sand, her legs trembling yet refusing to stop. The wasteland stretched endlessly, the sun burning overhead, but the Empress pressed forward. She whispered to him as they moved, words she never thought she would speak. "You mocked no one. You proved me wrong. You showed me what it means to be human." Hours passed before they stumbled upon a caravan camp hidden among the cliffs. Traders gasped at the sight of the Empress, bruised and bloodied, carrying the human across the sands. They rushed to help, giving water and binding wounds. The human was laid upon blankets, his chest rising faintly. The Empress sat beside him, refusing to move, her crown lying forgotten in the dust. She watched him breathe, her heart aching with a weight she had never known. When his eyes opened again, weak but alive, she reached for his hand. "You saved me when my own people abandoned me. You fought when they betrayed me. I mocked humanity, but I was blind. Your heart is stronger than any throne." He looked at her, lips curling into a faint smile. "And yet you carried me when I could not walk. Maybe you are learning what it means to be human too." Her chest tightened. For once, she could not find words of pride. Instead, she simply bowed her head, a gesture she had never given to anyone before. The desert winds howled outside the camp, but within, a fragile silence wrapped around them. The empire she once ruled was gone, her throne lost. Yet something far greater had risen from the ashes, the truth that humanity's heart could not be mocked, only honored. The tiny Empress of Scorn, once feared and proud, now sat humbled, beside a dying man who lived by choice, not by crown. And in that moment she understood the lesson the galaxy had missed for centuries. Power did not come from fear or wealth or bloodlines. It came from compassion, from sacrifice, from the strength to carry another when the world turned against you. She held his hand tightly, her golden eyes burning with a vow. "You will not be forgotten. I will tell them all. Humanity is not weak. Humanity is hope." The fire of dawn broke across the wasteland, casting light on the wounded human and the humbled Empress. Their journey was not over, but its meaning was clear. The heart of humanity had changed her forever, and nothing, not empires, not enemies, not pride, could erase it.